Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Past, Present, and Future of Non-Native Species Risk Analysis. My name is Sebastian Gomez Maldonado, and I'm honored to be your host. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Past, Present, and Future. And I am honored to be your host today on behalf of Invasivesnet, the International Association for Open Knowledge on Invasive Alien Species, in collaboration with the GuardIAS project, which is funded by the European Union's Horizon Europe program. Invasive is a nonprofit and non-governmental organization dedicated to fostering open, high-quality knowledge exchange on invasive species. Our mission is to build a global sustainable network, connecting researchers, practitioners, and stakeholders working towards a better understanding and management of biological invasions. Today's webinar is part of our ongoing commitment to promoting dialogue and capacity building in invasion science, with a special focus on risk analysis frameworks, past evolutions, current methodologies, and future directions. It is a rare pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Lorenzo Vilizzi, professor at the University of Lodz in Poland, and a world-renowned expert in invasion biology. Dr. Vilizzi holds a PhD in aquatic science and brings over 25 years of experience in the ecology and management of aquatic invasive species. He is the author of nearly 160 peer-reviewed publications and the developer of several international use decision support tools, including the Aquatic Species Invasiveness Screening Kit and its terrestrial counterparts for animals and plants. He has also led numerous multinational research programs and delivered training workshops across the globe, advancing the practical application of risk screening tools for invasive species management. We are delighted to have him with us today to share his insights on how risk analysis has evolved, the current state of practice, and where it might be headed in the future. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Lorenzo Vilizzi. Lorenzo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. And without further ado, we can start. You can see the screen now? Just make sure.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. No, because I don't have the colored frame around. Okay, so the purpose of this webinar is to provide an overview of the progress that has been made in research on non-native species risk analysis in the last 20 years or so. So this is why we will be looking at the past, how everything originated, the present, the current state of things, and the future, what we can do to move forward with and improve our knowledge on non-native species risk analysis. So first of all, something that we need to keep clear in mind is the main components of risk analysis, because the distinction can be quite confusing. It is effectively quite confusing even if you have a look, do a quick search of the literature, because the terms are often overlapping. But for our purposes and throughout, we will focus on these three components of the risk analysis process: risk identification, also known as risk screening, risk assessment, and risk management and communication. First of all, we need to make a clear distinction, again, at least for our purposes, and eventually for the usage of the related toolkits, between risk identification and risk assessment. Like I said, these are two different phases, two different steps in the risk analysis process. The risk identification, as the name suggests, the purpose is to identify the risks and the level of risk of a certain species, of a non-native species. After we have identified the risk and the corresponding level, then we carry out, we conduct, we do a full assessment of a certain species, both qualitatively and quantitatively. So basically, the key difference, the fundamental difference, is that risk identification takes place before risk assessment. And this is actually, like I said, a distinction that must be kept in mind. The purpose of risk identification, well, overall, the purpose of risk analysis is to identify, and then eventually evaluate, and then eventually find a way to manage those species likely to carry a high or very high risk of invasion. And this will facilitate implementation of management actions, and this will also inform, and keep in mind this word because we will stress this point later during the talk, inform decision makers about the allocation of resources to counteract non-native species identified as carrying a high or medium and sometimes risk of invasiveness. Then eventually, after we identify the species, then we do a full risk assessment that includes all possible components that should be taken into account. So to summarize visually, risk identification, risk assessment, and followed by risk management. Now, in terms of toolkits, obviously, we need some to facilitate the risk identification process. Back in 1999, so we're talking about some 26 years ago, the weed risk assessment for screening, for identifying the risk of non-native plants was developed, this system in Australia, like I said, for non-native plants, initially terrestrial and also expanded to aquatic plants. The weed risk assessment works in this way that you answer a questionnaire consisted of 49 questions based on the summation of the scores for the individual questions. You come up with a final score that tells you whether the species should be accepted for importation, rejected for importation, or evaluated, further evaluated. This was the parlance, the original parlance used in the WRA that eventually translated into for the toolkits that we will see shortly will be a species accepted will be low risk, rejected high risk, rejected pending further evaluation will be a medium risk species. And this is the questionnaire structure of the original WRA with these 49 questions divided into two sections and categories within the sections. So keep this in mind, the questionnaire structure. Now, given that the WRA was available from 1999 or since 1999, Gordon Kopp, our late colleague, developed, adapted the WRA for application to freshwater fishes in the UK. This was the initial transformation, adaptation of the WRA to be for the screening of freshwater fish species in the UK, England and Wales to be picky. And so the FISC, the questionnaire structure of the FISC, the Fish Invasiveness Screening Kit, was adapted. The structure remained overall the same. Obviously, the questions were readapted because to refer to freshwater fish species instead of terrestrial and aquatic plants. And this is how the FISC came to be. Initially, it didn't even have a version number, was available as a very rudimentary beta version, not just an automated Excel spreadsheet in the first 2 to 3 years of its life. And then eventually I stepped in, it was about in 2007, we started to develop a more user-friendly toolkit with improvements to the code, to the GUI, which is the graphical user interface, to make it easier to use for, to the scientific community. And then eventually, given the success of already at the beginning of the FISC for freshwater fishes, we developed equivalent, similar toolkits for amphibians, for screening amphibians, the AMFISC, freshwater invertebrates, the FISC, marine fish, the AMFISC, marine invertebrate, plus, a bit later, a version in Spanish. So, from 2012 to 2015, we had some 5 plus 1 toolkits. So taxon specific, because each toolkit, there were clones, but each toolkit was specific to a certain group of aquatic organisms, plus the Spanish niche version for the fish, for the freshwater fish. However, there was a limitation. Think about it. because the toolkits, like I said, they were separate. Each toolkit was for screening a certain group of organisms, and also the FISC was available separately in English and then in Spanish. So the idea was to, why not combine all these toolkits together into a single one, where the user will select the taxonomic group to screen and in the language, in their native language. And so we have the idea of upgrading the FISC or the ISC first generation family of toolkits to, to a second generation family of toolkits. This started, obviously, the answers must be mentioned, because at the same time, the European Non-Native Species in Aquaculture Risk Analysis Scheme became available, developed by the European Union. And basically, this represents the risk assessment. As part of this is actually a multi-module scheme of which the screening, so think about in terms of the FISC, is one of the components. In fact, it's called the pre-screening module, as we will see soon. And so we developed the ASISC. The ASISC is the Aquatic Species Invasive Screening Kit. Well, the advantage was that with the ASISC, you could screen, you could select the aquatic organism group for screening. It could be fish, amphibians, reptiles, freshwater fish, marine fish, and whatever, in one single toolkit. So the questionnaire remained always based on the 49 questions of the FISC inherited from the WRA, plus an additional 6 questions related to climate change, because it was actually one of the requirements, of the minimum requirements for toolkits, for a reliable decision support tool, is to include predictions for climate change. So basically, the ASIS questionnaire consists of a total of 55 questions, as we will see soon. 49 for the basic risk assessment, the basic current climate conditions, plus 6 questions for the current, for the climate change assessment. So the ASISC became available in 2016 to replace the whole FISC family of toolkits, even though, as we will see shortly, the FISC and related toolkits are still being used by some researchers, for reasons in some cases beyond my understanding. Anyway, for 2 years, the ASISC was available, as most of you have been using it already, relying on a user-friendly interface, very powerful, lots of features. And from 2018, the ASISC version 2 was released, which is the version currently available. That obviously is much faster in terms of handling large data sets, doing computations, producing reports way faster than the ASISC V1. Given to dramatic major improvements to the code, lots and lots of features. If you have had the chance to read through the user's guide, the user guide is about 40 pages to describe all the features of the toolkit. The ASISC is for the screening of 27 aquatic organism groups. So with the upgrade to the version 2, the full taxonomic range of aquatic organisms can be screened by the toolkit, keeping in mind that the ISC second generation toolkits, but also the first ones, were never meant to screen viruses. So viruses cannot be screened with the toolkits. And so we thought eventually, that was in 2022, given that now we have a full toolkit successfully employed all over the world for screening aquatic organisms, let us develop one for terrestrial animals. And so we did. And the same, a bit later, last year, actually beginning of last year, but we started development in 2023, we developed the same toolkit for screening terrestrial plants. So currently we have 3 toolkits, as I will show soon. Importantly, the TIP-SISC for screening terrestrial plants is meant to be a replacement for the WRA, given the WRA is still rudimentary And whereas the TIPSIS contains all the features of the successfully employed ASISC for screening terrestrial plants, and we are starting to see some applications already. The questionnaire structure, like I said, is all the same across the toolkits. So again, 55 questions now. So the questions for the basic risk assessment, BRA, in sections A and B, and the ones for the climate change assessment in section C. The strength of the ISC second generation toolkits, which is actually has allowed them to be used all over the world, is that the deployment, they can be easily, first of all, can be easily retrieved. You know where to go. Now is the new USGS website. You can retrieve the Excel application, and the spreadsheets are no longer embedded in the software, but it's like a real Excel program. They're separate from the program. You open the ASISC dedicated spreadsheet database into the software, and then you work on it, and then eventually you close it, and then this means that data can be exchanged across users. So these are the taxonomic groups of the ASISC: 27 for aquatic organisms, 12 for terrestrial animals, 7 for terrestrial plants. Importantly, these taxonomic groups, I didn't include this slide, but just in terms of to keep it simple, they rely on the taxonomical classification by Ruggero et al., which is the most widely accepted. They are multilingual. Just to give you an idea of the extent of usage in the current version, including 31 languages, including English, they can be used in the official language of some 166 countries that represent 85% of the 195 UN recognized countries worldwide. This is the list of supported languages. The multilingual features, if you're interested, this is actually the seminal paper that was, I co-authored with Gordon at the time, was also actually regarding one of the significant developments in the field of ecolinguistics in 2021. Recently, and actually this was published in the special issue dedicated to Gordon Kopp, questionnaire improvement. The questionnaires have been, the questionnaire in the version v2.4.1 have been improved across all 3 toolkits to make them consistent, not only across toolkits, but across languages. So basically the translation, the interface, the language in which the questionnaire is available has been double-checked to make it as rigorous as possible. Oops, sorry, I skipped it. So this is actually what we have now available, the second generation family of ISC tools, including the ASISC, TASISC, and TIPSISC, all in the version 2.4.1. And note this, these toolkits until last year or early this year, they were available from the CIFAS website. From now on, they will be available from the United States Geological Survey website, SIREN. And this is actually, just to give you an idea, this is actually a slide that I like to show because it shows the evolution of the ISC first generation and second generation toolkits compared to the non-evolution of the WRA that has always remained the same in its 26 years of life. In terms of publications, this gives you an idea. The publications with the FISC and the related toolkits of the first generation are as many as 80, in how many, 20 years. Look at the publications of only the ISC, the ASISC mainly. We are talking about 103 publications in only 7 years. And to give you an idea of how they compare, this is a general showing the applications of the WRA toolkits, including the WRA proper, compared to the other screening toolkits, namely Harmonia Plus, CMIST, they are available. Obviously, they're much less in terms of numbers. However, this doesn't mean that other screening toolkits, mainly Ammonia Plus and CMIST, should not be used. In fact, they have been used in conjunction, so in some application by some authors, and especially I would like to focus on this last publication, again contributing to the special issue in Management of Biological Invasions that came out early this year in January. The publication by Rogero et al., to which I participated as an author, uses the three toolkits in conjunction. So, back to recapitulation, remember the steps in risk analysis, invasion science: risk identification, assessment, and management. What is the future? So remember that the purpose of the ASIST was to combine all the separate aquatic organism-specific toolkits together. The same can be thought of the ASIST, ASIST, and the PSISC that may be combined into a single ISC toolkit, comprehensive, where the user can choose whether they want to screen a terrestrial animal, a terrestrial plant, or an aquatic organism. And also in terms, well, obviously this would require a seminar, a webinar on its own. When we do the screening, we need to retrieve information about the species, basically know whether the species at the worldwide level is invasive or non-invasive. Okay, I cannot actually talk about this because we have no time. The information that has been collected so far for some, we have screenings for some 1,800 taxa with the IST toolkits, can be tapped into databases, existing databases or platforms like the EASING. In terms of risk assessment, remember the ANSAS. Currently, the ANSAS is only available as a rudimentary spreadsheet, hard to use, hard to retrieve. The idea is to develop a similar electronic decision support tool similar to the IST toolkits for the ANSAS. And the same can be done for the risk management module that was developed back in 2011 by Britton et al. Again, it consists of separate spreadsheets, hard to use and not very easy to retrieve. They can be combined into a toolkit, dedicated toolkit that I'm willing to develop, provided that I get some funding. So eventually, what we would be aiming at is to have a future suite of decision support tools that would include the ISC, the ANSAS, and the MMT, this management by a suite of electronic decision support toolkit for usage worldwide by researchers. Very briefly, you may be aware that this is actually very, very short excerpt. Now I'm running out of words from the workshops that I organize, risk screening courses. These workshops actually is aimed for not only for scientists but also for managers in invasion science to provide all the skills to carry out the screenings and properly and eventually come up with correct information to provide to government agencies and government bodies. The courses last for 4 to 5 days, includes all teaching material, and actually they've been, well, this is a list of, this course, have been conducting these courses worldwide, quite successfully, also on behalf of the United Nations. And these are certified courses where eventually, after the course, you will have a certificate that will give you all, with the proofs that you have all the skills to carry out the screening successfully with the IST toolkits. And this is it for me. I'm just going to find the mouse. Okay, I will stop sharing the screen and show again my pretty face. And thank you, everyone, for for your attention. And then on to Sebastian, if you're going to have this Q&A short session. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much, Lorenzo, for that fascinating and comprehensive presentation. We'll now move into the Q&A session. So if you haven't already, please feel free to drop your questions into the Zoom chat or raise your hand and I'll call you directly. We'll try to get through as many questions as we can in the time we have. So okay.
I
we
left
have,
speechless.
yeah, we have one person. So, hi.
Wafa, hi, Wafa. We were this morning on a meeting for our Rock Me project from Kuwait. Please. Hello, Wafa.
All right, well, I think there's issues with the
Hmm.
microphone. So if that's okay with you, Wafa, I'm gonna go ahead and allow another one to talk in the meantime, and then we'll get back to you.
Idrissa.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for your nice presentation. My name is Idrissa. I'm from Burkina Faso.
Oh,
Yeah, so uh, uh, I really like the presentation. I was very interested by this species. I just want to ask some few questions.
yes.
The first question is about what what is the nuance invasive species and non-native?
Difference.
Yes.
Okay, okay. A non-native species, basically, there are several steps, that may lead a non-native species to become invasive. A non-native species firstly enters, the introduced range, and then eventually, after entering the introduced range, it may or may not establish. After establishing, it may or may not spread. After spreading, it may or may not cause an impact and or become invasive, because there's different views about it. So basically, not all, and actually, fortunately, few species, non-native species, become invasive. So all invasive species are non-native, but few non-native species are invasive.
Okay, great.
Okay.
My second question is in the I don't know if you know the red lists of IUCN. They generally make some assessment of species.
Yes.
I don't know if the criteria used in the IUCN and the risk assessment that you presented are the same or
Okay.
if there is difference.
Yes, yes. No, the IUCN, I mean, it tells you, if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves, whether a species is endangered, extinct in some cases, of no concern, little concern, or whatever. This is the purpose of the IUCN.
Yes,
For
yes.
determining the invasiveness of species, there are other databases, like, for instance, the easing European, or whatever it is, that tells you whether a species is invasive, has an impact or not. But the IUCN, if I'm not mistaken, has no, that doesn't, it tells you only about the state, the conservation status of a species.
Right. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I would like to conduct like a study about non-native species, non-native aquatic species in Burkina Faso.
Okay,
I don't know if you can give me some advice, if I can collaborate with
of
you,
course.
of
You can write to
or
me.
yes.
Okay, I will write here in my email address. Unless you, I don't know if you have my email address. I can. I'm struggling with this mouse because now that I
Oh,
have the present,
okay.
I
Well,
can
thank you so
in
much.
my mouse, and I just
Uh,
wanted to type something in the message box, but like I said, the mouse is gone. Ah, okay, here it is. It just came out of nowhere. Anyway, I will type in my email address. But it's also actually, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure actually whether the email address is also in the in the call for the webinar. Anyway, I type it
Okay.
here. It should be okay. So you can write to me
Okay.
anytime.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
we have some questions in the Q&A section, Dr. Vilizzi. So Do you want to read it? You want me to read it for you?
Because I don't see anything here. I don't see any.
Oh, okay.
No,
So,
because I can see.
oh, okay, got it. So one of the
Okay.
questions says, are these tools used at an EU level and comply to the IAS regulation in completing risk assessments?
Of course.
They use to prioritize the species for the union concern list?
Of course, because like I said, the ISC second generation ISC toolkits satisfy the minimum requirements set by the EU, and also they comply with the ENSAS, which is a European developed toolkit. Of course, they fully comply with EU regulations, and this is why we developed the ASIS, the ASISC, and eventually TASISC and TISC for this very reason.
We have another one. It says, could you walk us through your recommended procedure for threshold calibration step by step?
Okay, in that case, you will have to follow one of my courses. In the courses that I will describe, because like I said, it's a very long and convoluted procedure that it takes some level of training. And this is what I provide in my courses that they can be either in presence or online. Obviously, you can also actually look at my publications that are available on ResearchGate.
We have another one by Team. It says, how is the total risk score calculated and how are the thresholds for risk categories determined? Example, low, medium, and high.
Same as before. It would be very long to explain here. Again, you can first refer to my papers. Okay, there's some key papers that I wrote. All of my publications, they all include, information. Obviously, to acquire the skills in case, like I said, the references are not enough, you can contact me for the courses.
We will continue with another one. It's from Onur. First of all, thank you for your presentation. In recent years, systematic studies have been progressing rapidly, partly due to the influence of molecular and genetic studies. A species becomes a subspecies is classified as a species, and different species are grouped together or separated under a singular umbrella. I wonder if there were any preparations for the toolkit when such changes occurred in the database that emerged in species assessments.
Yes, this is a complication that comes up all the time. For instance, can you imagine, I'm currently with WAFA and 24 more participants from all Gulf countries. We are doing a reassessment of 138 species screened for the level of invasiveness in the Rock Missy area back in 2019-20. And in the last 6 years, there have been some changes in taxonomy. So taxonomical changes occur all the time. And so when in this case, when obviously you first of all, you need to update the databases all the time. So this needs a constant updating of even on an yearly basis. And obviously, species, when they're grouped into subspecies or whatever, they change name. When you do a search, for instance, because to answer the 55 questions of these toolkits, you need to do species-specific searches. In some cases, in such cases, you need to do a search for the old and the more recent taxonomic name, just to make sure that you don't miss any of the literature.
Thank you. Another question says by Team, the system is designed for experts assessment, and we know that there can be considerable variability between assessors. Are there any plans to provide an online module that could facilitate experts' elicitations with it, such as for Harmonia Plus?
I'm not sure actually what you mean for expert elicitation. I'm not sure. Can you elaborate on this question?
All right. Well, he
so you're talking determine who should be doing should qualify for a screening. Is that something like that? So screening
He says multiple experts doing the same
yes,
thing.
Yes, of course. Obviously, usually the best way to go is to have 2 or more experts screening one species. This is again something that I show in my slides for the course. Basically, and also actually something that I published in Vilizzi et al. 2022, the protocol for risk screening. Basically, it turns out that instead of screening, having 3 separate experts to screen the same species and compare the screenings, it is better in terms of the reliability of the findings and increase in the level of confidence for the 2 or 3 or more experts to work together as a group. And in some cases, under the supervision of a major expert, like for instance, in the case I'm doing for the ROCME study. So I have, for the ROCME study, the screening, large-scale screening for the ROCME Sea area for the Gulf. We have the participants from the 8 member states doing the screenings. Some of them work independently, others work together, and then eventually I will supervise in terms of consensus screenings. I will check the quality of all the screenings as the main supervisor.
We have finally a question for Wafa. It says, the kits for assessing how inviting the ecosystems are to invasive species?
No, I don't understand. Again?
Yeah, it says, are there kits for assessing how inviting the ecosystems are to invasive species? Which I guess she means that yeah, I'm not quite sure what the question was there.
For the I don't so the kits allow to determine the level of risk of a species. Then the species can be or cannot be invasive. Okay, then you determine the level of risk. Obviously, in some cases, it's a bit obviously academic or whatever it is to screen a species that is already known to be invasive, unless you want to know to which extent this species is invasive. If it is highly invasive, a score of 60, 50, moderately invasive, a score of 40, just to cast a figure or so or less. This is as far as I can understand it.
Well, we're going to go ahead on the last 2 questions. And it says, great presentation. We're currently using ASIS ask to assessment ornamental species in Australia. Surprisingly, species are coming out as very high risk, even though they have had a long history of only failed introductions in the RA area. How can we discuss these species since they are considered by managers as low risk because of their history?
Oh, I will need actually, if you can contact me directly, because I will need to look into this, more specifically. And then I may be able to give you an answer. Okay, you can contact me, just write to me.
And lastly, there's an issue with new ask versions where the threshold for bar and bar plus CCA cannot be adjusted separately. Is it by design?
Cannot be adjusted separately. I don't understand. Send me a screenshot of. I just need a screenshot of what you're trying to do. Okay, because I need to look at the screenshot. As far as I know, the only there was one issue. Actually, some researchers from Galapagos, if I'm not mistaken, they contacted me and say that they said the issues may be related to the fact that in the Spanish version or whatever they use the comma instead of the dot. It could be like this. The point is, if this is a bug or a programming issue, I need to work on. Anyway, I need to have a screenshot and I need to work on the actual computer. This is the point, because in some cases I'm contacted with some of these issues. I cannot replicate the error because I'm not using that particular specific computer with that specific Windows or Excel configuration. But you can contact me directly with a screenshot and I will see what I can do.
Well, I think that will be all. Thank you again to everyone for joining us today, and a special thanks to Dr. Lorenzo Vilizzi for sharing his time, expertise, and thoughtful reflection on the evolving field of non-native species risk analysis. This webinar was hosted by Invasivesnet in partnership with the GuardIAS project as part of our shared effort to foster open knowledge and global collaboration on invasive species research and management. If you'd like to stay informed about future webinars, publications, or opportunities to get involved, feel free to visit our website at invasivesnet.org or follow our social media. With that, we'll close today's session. Thank you again for being with us and hope to see you on future InvasiveNet event.
Thank you very much again. Thanks.